What's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. I'm doing a video tonight about the whole Joe Rogan controversy. Late to the party as always. This channel should be called Yesterday's News, quite frankly, but I wanted to weigh in with my own opinion of it. Since this is so music-based and it involves Spotify, a platform that my band uses heavily, and a lot of artists leaving it and all that, I wanted to throw my 2 cents into this arena, even though it might not be the most breaking news. So Joe Rogan, the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, it's been around for a really long time now. It's accumulated all of the listeners in the world. Everybody and their grandmother listens to this podcast. So he's been popular for a long time. And at some point in, I think, 2020 or 2021, he inked some deal with Spotify for $100 million where they have sole distribution rights for his podcast. So really, you can pretty much only listen to it, the new episodes on Spotify, something like that. Anyway, so the dude's had a bunch of controversial figures on his podcast in the past, but everyone got their panties in a wad when in January 12th of this year, I think, an open letter to Spotify was signed by over 1,000 health professionals and scientists urging it to tackle the misinformation around the pandemic, and this letter cited episodes of Joe Rogan Experience that featured physician and virologist Dr. Robert Malone, who's already been banned from Twitter for violating its COVID misinformation policies. And so that got, the science community all in an uproar. And then what happened after that was Neil Young got involved and all that. Now, I would just go on record at the very beginning here to say that I don't like Joe Rogan. I never liked his podcast. I gave it a listen years ago before it became super popular, and I just felt like his episodes were way too long. They're 3 hours long. I just don't really like Joe Rogan's dude bro stoner personality in general. I feel like his main go-to phrase is, "Whoa, that's crazy." He's not he doesn't strike me as a deep guy at all. But, that's neither here nor there. That's just my opinion. And I've seen people go why are people getting so on top of Joe Rogan for this? He's just a dumb caveman and all that. And it's yeah, I agree with all that. But at this point, he has 11 million listeners per episode. So he does have a platform at this point. So basically what that means is that stupid people could potentially listen to Joe Rogan and one of his guests hears some advice and then go and do that bad advice because they are not smart enough to do their own fact checking. So that's why it's been such a big controversy, because he does have such a big platform. If he only had 2,000 listeners a month or whatever, no one would give a flying crap about what Joe Rogan had to say about anything, or any of his guests for that matter. So then the artists, the musicians started coming in, and Neil Young was the biggest one, or the first one and the most vocal one. In January 26th, Neil Young, his entire music catalog is removed from Spotify. He wrote an open letter to Spotify saying that he will remove his catalog unless the platform drops the Joe Rogan Experience. And he accused Spotify of spreading false information about vaccines. That's cute that Neil Young thinks that he has that much pull that he's going to get this company that just dropped $100 million on Joe Rogan to just renege that contract and drop his podcast. It's Neil, you smoked too much of the jazz cabbage in the 60s, buddy. They were never going to do that, especially when some old folk singer tells them that they should do that. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So Neil Young pulls all his music from Spotify, and then his cohorts in that old folk band, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, all those guys pull their music too, which, Joni Mitchell, the old folk singer from back in the day, she pulled her music. My thing with that is, they weren't getting their bread buttered from Spotify anyway, so it's what did he really have to lose? I think Neil Young has he got a million, a little bit over 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify. Spotify pays artists so poorly that probably didn't net him that much money. I mean, and he's a pretty business savvy guy. He makes his money in other ways. So for him, this was, not only did it make a big statement that brought more relevance to him as a person, But also he knew he wasn't losing out that much by, dropping his music from Spotify. And the same can go for pretty much any of those artists that I just named. Their demographic is most likely listening to their music on like record players or 8-tracks. I mean, their audience are aging boomers, like very old boomers. I'm not saying that that's their entire audience. There are definitely younger people who listen to Neil Young, but the majority of their audience, if you were to look at the pie chart, it would mainly be 50 plus who listen to Neil Young. So it wouldn't be like a Post Malone pulling his music from Spotify, where literally 96% of his audience listens to his music that way. So I feel like there wasn't a whole lot on the line for Neil Young to do that, aside from just making a statement and getting publicity. And this is kind of where the whole hypocrite / overreaction part of my brain kind of kicked in, because then India.Arie dropped her music from Spotify. Obviously a much younger artist, much less relevant artist at that. I think she had a big album like 15 or 20 years ago when I was in like 6th or 7th grade, but she hasn't really remained relevant or in the spotlight. So this kind of gave her a little boost, making a big stink over pulling her music off the Spotify platform, because then the almighty Joe Rogan, a clip surfaced of him using racial slurs like over 24 times or something like that, which, by the way, these people who make these crazy compilation videos, how many hours and days of your life does it take listening and sifting through all these episodes of Joe Rogan? Like the old episodes when he's like literally in his living room with like horrible lighting, and he's like just talking with his buddies, like in the early 2000s when that kind of edgy racial humor was a lot more prevalent and a lot more common on the internet. It must have taken forever to compile that, but I just find it funny that India.Arie is taking her music off of Spotify because they have Joe Rogan on there, and she finds his language problematic, so she doesn't want to be associated with Spotify. When at the same time, there's literally millions of rappers on there whose lyrical content consists of violence towards women, drug use, homophobia in the early Eminem albums. I mean, just literally everything, like all these horrible topics under the sun. You have rock bands that glorify drugs and other stupid things, sexual misconduct and all that. I mean, there's so many artists on the platform who are really big, who are like have these awful messages that they're spreading, but that never bothered India.Arie. It was only when when the biggest podcaster in the world gets caught with his foot in a bear trap, does she pile on because she wants that clout. That just screams like clout chasing to me. I'm sorry. Like, you could have spoke up at any other time, India, about like your problems with certain language being used on the platform and not wanting to be associated with it, but you waited until the biggest target was available, and that's when you decide to shoot your shot. And that's just that to me is just so hypocritical. I mean, it's one thing to like pull your music off the site because you feel like the dude's spreading misinformation and all that. It's still a stupid reason, but it's not as stupid or it's not as hypocritical than India.Arie's reason for doing it. So some of the other artists who have pulled their music off Spotify are literally people who I've never heard of, and not saying I'm the biggest music nerd in the world, but I'm pretty, big into music, so I feel like I would have heard of these people. You got Nils Lofgren, the guitarist for Bruce Springsteen's band, apparently pulled his music. I guess he has a solo career or something. I'm sure a lot of people were heartbroken over that. And you got this LA cult rock band called Failure, who pulled their music. I never heard of them, but by the term cult rock, I'm assuming they weren't very big. And not saying that there's anything wrong with not being big. It's just like, okay, who cares? I mean, yeah, again, it's like it just comes across as clout chasing in me. It's like you want to like virtue signal so hard, like you want to jump on this train because it bids you some kind of relevance in that moment. And then there's just kind of like this whole like outside of like these artists, there's this whole other culture on social media with people like unsubscribing to Spotify and, you know, just kind of following the leader, just kind of following what the SJW and the virtual signaling is doing. And because, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it is. I'm not even like right wing, dude. I'm not. Like, I just think for myself. I don't affiliate with any of that. I actually don't really like a lot of the aspects of the Republican Party and right-wing ideology. So if this is coming off that way, I'm not trying to be. But the left gets out of control too, and this is one of those times where the left is just being way too flag-waving with their virtues. You know, it's easy for people like Neil Young and Joni Mitchell to pull their music off of Spotify because they're already millionaires. But then there's so many smaller groups who literally have like less than a dozen or maybe even less than like 5 ways their music can get heard on a mainstream level. You got like Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, kind of SoundCloud, but not really. And honestly, that's all I can think of. So really 3 major ways. And Spotify, from all the data that I've seen, is the biggest streaming platform, meaning most of the people who are going to gain access to your music is going to be through Spotify. So it's all fine and dandy for all these people who aren't in music, aren't in bands, they're not trying to make a career out of that. It's all fine and dandy for them to virtue signal and be like, I'm canceling my Spotify subscription. But it's like, don't look down on me when I'm trying to promote my new single and I'm sending you the link to it via Spotify, because I have no other avenue that I have to use it. You know, like a lot of other artists are in that same boat. I mean, even artists that are huge, it's like India.Arie took her music off of Spotify because Joe Rogan used some racial slurs. Okay, well, I mean, you could just not listen to Joe Rogan and just have a, you know, take all the issue in the world with what he did, because I mean, I think it's shitty too that he did that. But I mean, I think you know, her contemporary artists, their music is still on there because I think they know that you, even if you're big, you have to have your music available and able to be discovered, because any day you can drop off and you need that ad revenue, even though it's not a lot. I mean, if you get up into like Drake level streams, you're still getting a nice check from that. Because, I mean, even though they pay you a fraction of a penny per play, that adds up if you have 100 million, you know, monthly listeners. But yeah, it's just kind of this like overreaction culture. People want to be the, you know, like they want to seem like they're the most virtuous by doing things first. And, oh, I denounced Spotify before anyone else did and all that. And it's just like, I don't get why Spotify is catching all the heat instead of it just all going directly to Joe Rogan. And to a certain extent, I don't even understand the Joe Rogan thing either. I mean, I understand the whole racial slur thing. Obviously, that was messed up. But like, Joe Rogan has had people on his podcast that have had different viewpoints about vaccines and all that. But he's also had people on his podcast who are for vaccines and are explaining why it's a good idea. And, you know, Joe Rogan's just having 2 opposing ideas because, I mean, that's part of a good debate, right? I mean, obviously I'm for the vaccine side of things. I've gotten my booster and all that stuff, but I'm not going to be offended if someone's on there exploring a different possibility. Although, I mean, I guess it could mean that less people get vaccinated, so that's problematic. But Spotify even has this thing now where they slapped a warning label on the every episode, like this contains, you know, it could possibly contain misleading information about vaccines. And I think that's a smart move, but I think that's as far as it should go for Spotify, because I think at Spotify at its best is just a neutral platform where anybody can release whatever they want on there. As soon as Spotify has to start choosing and picking like what content is acceptable and what content is not acceptable, that is a very dangerous place that you do not want to be, because then that's when you start getting into heavy censorship. I mean, it starts with that, but then, you know, where do you go from there? You know, it's like, well, you know, India.Arie got offended by Joe Rogan saying, which is apprehensible, but then it's like, okay, so we're going to start pulling stuff where people start, you know, using slurs. Okay, well, there goes most of rap music. So I mean, I don't think the problem should be with Spotify. I don't think you should cancel your Spotify subscription over this. I think that you should, I don't know, send an angry tweet to Joe Rogan. Say your dissenting opinions to Joe Rogan. Or if you meet someone who's against vaccines and you're for them, explain to them in a calm manner why you think they work. You're not going to change the person's mind, because these anti-vax people just have their minds made up. But ain't that why this is America? And also, like, Neil Young, being like one of the biggest hippies of all time, like, to sit there and tell a company like what they should and shouldn't do, and to have them be censored. I mean, isn't that the most anti-hippie thing ever? Like, isn't it all about, like, you know, free to say what you feel and all that other kind of stuff? I don't know. Anyway, that's my whole take on the whole situation. And like I said, it mainly hurts me because we are a small band. We are trying to build our fan base up, and Spotify is a big tool for that. And now you got a bunch of people going, oh, I'm unsubscribing and I'm blah, 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 blah. And I personally just don't understand why you're getting mad at the company that's simply hosting this. What are your opinions? Tell me in the comments section below. I would like to hear what you have to say on this matter. Yeah, until next time, have a good rest of your night.